Hi Jeremy, or Modern Vitality. In today's video we're exploring whatever your acupuncturist said to you last time you saw them and what the hell it actually means. So this is something that's a little bit dear to my heart. In 2009 I started private practice in Eastern medicine. I was doing a lot of acupuncture and things like that. And one of the challenges, I'm going to tell you very transparently here, one of the challenges is to take a comprehensive framework like Eastern medicine, right? These traditional systems-based medical approaches with its own special jargon, right? Its own words and concepts like qi, right? And jing and shen and channels and energy and all this stuff, and take those concepts which are functional and work, right? And the way we implement that, and you start using the actual tools of the medicine, it works great. But you take those concepts and try to translate it into conversational English, and a lot of times people are just like looking at you cross-eyed because they don't know what you're saying. Right? So I've had a lot of people come, especially within our group, Modern Vitality Solutions and Support, where we focus on complex chronic health conditions, right? It's a free group, and we have an international base of people with like Lyme disease, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue syndrome, mold exposure, long haulers, right? That kind of stuff. All these like gnarly head scratcher, funky conditions, anything autoimmune, inflammatory, all this stuff. And they come in and they say, hey, I've gotten acupuncture in the past, or I just started getting acupuncture, and my acupuncturist said I have spleen qi deficiency or liver qi stagnation. Right? Or they're concerned about my heart or my kidneys. What does that mean? Now I'm concerned. Now I'm scared. What the hell's going on? Right? So one of the things I had to learn very early on was how to actually translate these ideas so it wasn't freaking people out. Because most people don't have the context of having studied Eastern medicine for like 4 years at a minimum and understand what all this means. So what I'll tell you, if your acupuncturist has said anything like that to you, without giving you context, it's not their fault. They don't know how to communicate about this. This is a special skill to have, to be able to break these things down. But if you start talking about internal organs, people usually start getting freaked out, right? I don't know about you, but you may not spend like most of your day, most people don't, thinking about their spleen or their gallbladder, right? We don't think about this stuff. It's just inside our body. It's kind of running on autopilot. It's not something you put your attention to, right? Just like you don't need to tell your heart to beat every second or whatever. You don't have to think about your spleen and go, "Ooh, I hope it's working," right? You just don't think about it. It's out of sight, out of mind. It's just one of those things. So when your acupuncturist draws your attention to that, oftentimes what happens is we come with a framework that's a little bit extreme, meaning as soon as they say, "Oh, it's your kidneys," then we think, "I've got kidney disease," and we're automatically at like 10 out of 10 in terms of severity. This is the subtlety and the nuance, because it's not like your fault for not knowing this stuff, and it's not the acupuncturist's fault for not knowing how to talk about it. But what's going on is we have a cultural context where if you go to your regular MD, right, that kind of doctor, they don't talk about internal organs unless something's really wrong, right? You look at lab reports, and by the way, anybody can do a surface level lab report, because the lab report, you can get your own lab reports back and just look at it, and it just says, here's the normal range, right? Here's what we measured, normal or not. And you can just look and they'll highlight everything that says abnormal, right? So it doesn't take a lot of skill and experience to do that. It comes printed on the paper, right? In terms of lab reading, the skill and experience is to be able to see those things and connect the dots and then understand the processes that led to that and where your health is going. That's a different set of skills. But what I will tell you is that if your doctor says, "Oh, we got your labs back and your kidneys are failing," right? That's because those are the ranges. Like the thing only highlights on the labs when there's like a big problem. So you need to start looking at that and zoom out and go, okay, I'm used to having conversations about organs only when there's like a failure going on, right? We're concerned about your heart attack, right? These kinds of things. In Eastern medicine, it's a lot more subtle. It's not so black and white of like calamity or don't worry about it, right? There's a lot of space in between. And so we can start to measure, whether it's taking the pulse, looking at the tongue, assessing your symptom picture of what's all going on in terms of like how's your body acting, what are all the little quirks and things that it's manifesting, what color's your skin, all these, there's like very interesting, I don't mean like skin color like race, but like what kind of sheen does it have? Like, is it pale? Is it dark? Is there yellowish? Things like that. You look at all these things, facial diagnosis. The way people speak can even tell you about what's going on internally with them once you know how to like categorize that and listen. And then we can start to put together a picture that's more nuanced and subtle about what's going on. So if your acupuncturist says, "Hey, your Eastern medicine diagnosis is kidney deficiency," right? That is a whole different thing than kidney failure, right? Kidney deficiency in Eastern medicine is going to relate to like the organ system of the kidney, meaning that there's different jobs the kidneys have. And some of those jobs might just be like decreased, right? There's a little bit of decreased function, but it doesn't necessarily mean you got a problem with your physical organ, right? Sometimes it might, But most times we're on a spectrum where it's not that severe. So I know for a time in my career, I never said any of that. I just zipped my lips up. I didn't like, unless somebody beat it out of me, I wasn't telling them their Chinese medicine diagnosis because I didn't want to set off unnecessary fear, right? Especially if you look and there's like a condition like heart blood deficiency, right? Oh my goodness, my heart's not getting enough blood. I'm going to have a heart attack. That's not it at all, right? Heart blood deficiency oftentimes manifests where people have a hard time remembering certain things. They have some trouble sleeping and they're, having pale gums and pale tongue and things like that. Doesn't mean you're going to have a heart attack, right? So you try not to, there's this negative placebo effect, right? Where you just scare the pants off of somebody and now there really is a problem. So you try not to trigger that. So for a time, I just buttoned it up. I didn't say any of that stuff. Now I've learned how to integrate languages and communicate a lot better. So I can talk about these kinds of things it's kind of like being bilingual. Like let's talk about from Western medicine and that kind of bioscience approach. And then we can also talk about the more energetic, functional Eastern medicine approach. But the main thing I want you to take away from this is that just because your acupuncturist says the name of an organ doesn't mean it's red alert, that organ's going to fail, you're dead, right? That's not it at all. And the reason why is because we have much more subtle and nuanced ways to assess things. So your organ, right, may be having trouble, but it may be like 3 out of 10 trouble, right? It's not 10 out of 10 trouble, but it's worth noting. And this is the great thing about this kind of medical approach, because a lot of times the people I meet, they're like, hey, I went to the doctor, I feel like hell. They ran my labs. They say I'm fine, right? Well, that's because they don't have the sensitivity around the labs. It's binary. It's either like calamity or nothing, like I said earlier. And it's highlighted or it's not, right? And it's pretty crude, right? But that's what it is. But it can be frustrating to go, I know something's wrong though, but they're telling me nothing's wrong. Well, something's wrong, but it's wrong a little bit in certain ways that they're not measuring. That's all, right? That's all. It's just a different lens. It's just a different way to look at it. And it's also a different way to talk about it. But what often happens is you're bringing old language patterns and meanings and associations into your head when you're going into a new kind of context. And the acupuncturist you're talking to probably doesn't know how to explain that stuff so well because it's really hard. It's really hard to translate. It's definitely a skill that you have to practice. It's not easy. So when they talk about your spleen, right, it doesn't mean that you've got like leukemia or something like that, right? When they talk about your kidney, it doesn't mean you have kidney failure. When they talk about your liver, it doesn't mean you have cirrhosis, right? These are all things we have to separate out. It's really important so that way you can come away from that kind of experience, which is usually a good experience for most people. You want to come away with that empowered, not worried about some internal organ that you maybe didn't even know existed in your body 5 minutes ago, and now you think there's like a red alert problem just because your acupuncturist felt something in your pulse, right? Which is, sometimes we can find serious issues, right? But in that case, usually the acupuncturist will say, hey, this is the kind of pulse that I feel when somebody's, having a heart attack, right? So get out of this office and go call 911, right? That's kind of the red flag referrals. That's usually what happens there. So if you didn't get referred out immediately or taken out on a stretcher, you probably have a little bit of time to try to heal and get things dialed in and get things more balanced, which you can do with acupuncture or you can do with herbs. You can do with specific breathwork practices, right? There's self-care, there's dietary changes. There's a lot of stuff. Sometimes people do need pharmaceuticals, right? There's all kinds of different ways to do it. Supplements are big, right? A lot of people use supplements. So there's how you translate in general. Now, obviously, I'm not going to take a bunch of liability like this is some medical advice or something. It's not. I'm giving you a behind-the-scenes look at how Eastern medicine professional thinks and what they mean when they say these words, right? So what you want to do is you want to take away the functional advice. So if your acupuncturist says to you, you've got kidney deficiency, or I'm concerned about your circulation and your heart, or I'm concerned about you have liver qi stagnation, or you have a damp and phlegmy constitution, or you have yin deficiency or blood stasis, or whatever it is, whatever they say to you, right? Your next question shouldn't be like, what does that mean, right? No, you're not going to learn 4 years of Chinese medicine in 2 minutes while they explain it to you, right? But what you can do is say, great, what do I do about it? And what's the prognosis? How long is it going to take to get better? And what do I have to do to be an active participant in healing this? Right? Because you can bypass the whole overthinking thing just with that one simple step. I hope that helps. So if these kinds of conversations are helpful for you, you might consider applying for our Modern Vitality Solutions and Support Group. We've got a lively community full of all kinds of folks from around the world, and we're all working on healing. It's all complex chronic stuff, right? Lyme disease, fibro, mold, chronic fatigue syndrome. I mentioned this earlier. It's free to apply as a guest. I'm going to look at your application, though. I'm going to make sure that you're a good fit for our group. And if everything looks great, we'll get you in as soon as we can. All right, let's get you feeling better. Cheers.